She was East Lafayette's golden smile, a renowned dentist with charm, class, and a reputation as spotless as her million-dollar smile. But behind that immaculate facade lurked a storm brewing in silence. Her daughter, brilliant and adored, wore privilege like a crown and wielded it like a weapon. No one could have imagined that the same hands that once scribbled honor roll essays would one day reach for a knife. But on a quiet spring evening, in a kitchen that smelled of rosemary and red wine, everything unraveled. Blood slicked the tile floors, a body lay still, and the prodigy stood over it, cold and composed. How does a daughter become her mother's executioner? What festers behind closed doors when love curdles into resentment? Stay with us as we unravel a tale where luxury, ambition, and entitlement ignite into murder. And before we dive in, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more chilling stories of love, betrayal, and bloodshed. Dr. Zamariah Greaves had the kind of success story East Lafayette worshipped, a rags-to-riches climb forged in grit and gleam. At 38, she was the face of black excellence, the woman with perfect teeth and a sharper mind. Her cosmetic dental practice catered to socialites and saints alike. Clients drove from 3 towns over just to sit in her velvet waiting room, sip cucumber water, and hear her say, "Smile like you mean it." She didn't just fix teeth, she restored confidence. On weekends, she stood before crowds of teenage girls, her voice smooth and radiant, preaching about purpose, poise, and perseverance. She knew what it meant to grow up without no father, a mother on disability, and roaches crawling through cereal boxes. But she vowed her daughter, Sierra, would never know struggle. Zamariah bought the house with the pale stone columns when Sierra turned 10. 5 bedrooms, smart glass, a sub-zero fridge, everything trimmed in ivory and gold. By then, her name sat on the cover of health magazines, and she was lecturing at conferences in Dubai and Johannesburg. She funded dental scholarships for black girls, ran free clinics for low-income families, and drove a midnight blue Mercedes she never let Sierra touch. But for all her public generosity, Zamariah was sharp with expectations at home. Grades had to be perfect, clothes had to fit just right, and no boy was ever good enough. Discipline, she believed, was love in its truest form. Sierra Greaves, 16 and beautiful in a way that demanded attention, didn't see it that way. She was used to getting what she wanted: white gold anklets, Prada mini bags, and flights to the Maldives just because she'd had a rough semester. Her mother spoiled her with material things, but withheld what Sierra really craved: autonomy, control, and the same spotlight her mother bathed in. At LaFontaine Prep, she reigned over the hallways like a queen in Gucci slides, her long nails clicking like a metronome as she strutted through the atrium. She filmed TikToks mocking classmates for cheap weaves and knockoff handbags, collecting views like candy. Her captions were cruel, her laugh even crueler. Still, her followers adored her. To them, she was flawless, fierce, untouchable. But something darker stirred beneath that filtered veneer. Sierra wasn't just confident, she was hollow. Her sense of worth hinged on numbers, likes, DMs, and the monthly allowance her mother controlled with unyielding precision. Every yes came with a lecture. Every no, a power struggle. She hated it. She hated the rules, the curfews, the way Zamariah still read her report cards and checked her bank transactions. In private, she began testing limits, sneaking out, stealing wine, flirting with older boys who whispered promises and rented Lamborghinis. And yet, in public, they remained East Lafayette's favorite mother-daughter duo. People called them goals, snapped pictures of them at galas and brunches, reposted their matching ball-mouth looks with captions like "Black excellence at its finest." To outsiders, they were a fantasy. Beauty, brains, and generational wealth wrapped in melanin and success. No one saw the way Sierra rolled her eyes when her mother spoke. No one heard the fights muffled by the walls of that cream-colored kitchen. No one knew the storm brewing in silence. But it was coming. And when it broke, nothing, not the prestige, the prayers, or the porcelain smiles, would survive. The kitchen was bathed in soft morning light, filtered through custom Roman shades Zamariah had flown in from Italy. She wore a pale pink silk robe, her hair wrapped in a satin scarf, nails glossy and precise as she stirred almond milk into her coffee. Sierra sat across the island, scrolling through her phone, her long lashes casting shadows on the marble countertop. It was a quiet Sunday, the kind where mothers and daughters trade soft laughs and plan spa appointments. But this morning held a shift, a pivot, so subtle in its delivery that it would take weeks for the world to understand just how lethal it was. "You'll start getting 200 a week from now on," Zamariah said casually, as though announcing a change in the weather. "You need to learn value." Sierra blinked, looked up. Her mother's tone was gentle, the way it always was when she thought she was doing something righteous. There was even a smile on her face, the smug kind, the one she wore during her TED Talks or Instagram live streams. Zamariah sipped her coffee like nothing had changed, like she hadn't just snatched $600 out of her daughter's world. Sierra didn't say a word, didn't flinch, didn't frown. Her face remained unreadable as she returned to her phone, nodding once with a mechanical kind of grace. Inside, though, something cracked. It wasn't about the money. Not really. It was about control, power, worth. The cut felt like a slap, a reminder that she was still tethered to her mother's rules, still a puppet in Zamariah's performance of perfect parenting. That morning, Sierra realized something. She was never going to be free until she carved it out for herself. By noon, she was lying on a sunken couch in Devrin Deuce Malloy's smoke-hazed apartment on the west side. The air was thick with weed, the blinds half closed, the TV blaring gunshots and sirens from Grand Theft Auto 5. Deuce, shirtless and inked from neck to navel, didn't even look up when she walked in. He just passed her the blunt, eyes glued to the screen. "She think I'm some broke-ass bitch," Sierra said, exhaling slowly, her voice flat but venomous. "Talking, but I need to learn value." Deuce chuckled, nodding toward the game controller. "Handle that then." 3 words, thrown out without weight, but they landed heavy in Sierra's mind, rooted in the deepest, coldest part of her ambition. Deuce didn't know what kind of monster he was feeding. Or maybe he did, and he liked it. She laid her head back, staring at the ceiling, fingers still holding the blunt. No tears, no fury, just calculation. Her lips curled into something that wasn't quite a smile. War had been declared, and Sierra Greaves never fought fair. The night hummed with laughter and the clink of wine glasses. In the backyard, fairy lights tangled through the trees, and Zamariah Greaves was in her element, pouring rich reds and buttery whites, dazzling her friends with that effortless, polished charm they all envied. Dr. Malika Thorpe, her closest friend and business partner, leaned into the glow of the fire pit, laughing too loud at something Zamariah said about a botched veneers case. It was a picture-perfect evening, the kind you post on Instagram with the caption "blessed beyond measure." Upstairs, in the silence above the party's noise, Sierra sat cross-legged on her plush bedroom rug, her phone pressed to her ear. Deuce's voice was low, focused, almost bored with how simple they agreed it would be. "Wait until she's out. Make it clean. No mess. Bleach everything." Sierra nodded, even though he couldn't see her. She stared out her window at the stars while her mother toasted another glass below, not knowing that her own daughter was finalizing the logistics of her death. When the party finally faded, when cars pulled away and goodbyes turned into silence, Zamariah collapsed onto the living room couch, still wearing her champagne-colored slip dress, her makeup perfect, her hair a crown of dark coils. A half-full glass of Pinot Noir rested on the table beside her. She drifted off there, peaceful, trusting the security of the life she'd built. At 1:26 a.m., Sierra peeled back her covers and slid her feet into the thick carpet. She wore black leggings and a hoodie zipped up to her throat. In her hand, a kitchen knife, freshly honed, the blade catching the moonlight slicing through her window. She moved through the dark house like a shadow, every step careful and practiced. She found her mother exactly where she expected, curled up on the couch, one hand limp over the armrest. The sight should have given her pause, should have cracked the hardened shell around her heart. But Sierra felt nothing. Not fear, not guilt, only the cold, sharp clarity of decision. The first stab was deep, vicious, driving into Zamariah's back. The blade met resistance, bone or muscle, and Zamariah jerked awake with a hoarse, animal cry. She twisted, trying to stand, blood already blooming across her dress. The second stab caught her in the shoulder, spinning her forward onto the rug. She clawed toward the hallway, confused and staggering, her voice broken with disbelief. "Sierra?" she gasped, reaching out as if this was some nightmare she could wake her daughter from. But Sierra followed with the slow, mechanical precision of a machine programmed to finish. She grabbed her mother's hair, pulled her head back roughly, and drew the knife across Zamariah's throat in one brutal stroke. Blood gurgled and spilled out in waves, soaking the cream rug. Her mother's body convulsed once, then fell still. Breathing hard, Sierra wiped the knife against the couch and grabbed her phone. "Bring the bleach," she texted. Minutes later, Deuce rolled up in a stolen Toyota Camry, high and vibrating with excitement. Together, they moved through the house with a sickening efficiency, scrubbing surfaces, dumping cleaning chemicals, burning scented candles to mask the iron tang of blood. They shoved Zamariah's lifeless body into one of her prized Louis Vuitton trunks, bending her at grotesque angles to fit. By 3 a.m., they were speeding down a deserted back road, the swamp yawning open to swallow them whole. The trunk thumped wetly in the back seat every time they hit a pothole. They laughed they laughed drunk on adrenaline and youth and the sheer power of having destroyed something sacred. At the water's edge, under the sickle moon, they wrapped the suitcase in duct tape, lashed cinder blocks to it with stolen rope, and heaved it into the black water. It sank quickly, without ceremony, vanishing into the swamp's endless belly. They stood there a moment longer, fingers laced, still high, still invincible. Sierra lit a blunt with shaking fingers. Deuce kissed her forehead. It was over, she thought. No one would ever know. The morning sun rose over East Lafayette like any other, brushing gold across rooftops and hummingbirds. But inside the Greaves' home, the air still carried a bite of bleach and something else, something heavier. Sierra stood in front of her bathroom mirror, Zamariah's bloody diamond earrings glinting like trophies against her neck. Her curls were slicked back into a perfect bun, lashes curled, lip gloss shimmering. She held up her phone and snapped a selfie, leaning into Deuce with a wicked grin, both of them throwing up gang signs like they were in a music video instead of the aftermath of a murder. The caption read, "Broke who? Stay mad, stay dead." There was no fear, no remorse, just ice in her chest and heat in her veins. She felt untouchable. By 10 a.m., she was in line at the local hardware store, Zamariah's gold Rolex sliding up and down her wrist as she cradled a gallon of bleach like it was almond milk. A clerk complimented her jewelry. Sierra winked. Meanwhile, miles away, Dr. Malika Thorpe sat in her office, tapping her screen. 3 unread messages. No response from Zamariah. That alone wasn't strange. Zamariah was known to detox from her phone sometimes, but something itched at Malika's gut. She'd never gone this long without even a voice memo. She tried calling. Voicemail. She tried again. Nothing. By noon, Malika's worry had sharpened into something darker. She called the police. The welfare check came swiftly. 2 deputies knocked on the cream-colored door of the Greaves estate. There was a long pause before it opened. And then, there she was. Sierra Greaves. 16, glowing, poised, holding a macchiato in one hand, clad in a designer hoodie, those same bloody earrings still dangling from her lobes. "Can I help you?" she asked, voice light, head tilted. The deputies noticed it immediately. The heavy scent of bleach leaking from the doorway. The faint, coppery undertone that bleach couldn't mask. One of them glanced down, saw the way the floorboards near the hallway seemed oddly damp, though it stained dark and strange, irregular patterns. Sierra just smiled. Not a twitch of panic, not a blink of hesitation, as if she hadn't slaughtered her mother hours before, as if the house wasn't soaked in blood and lies. The walls closed in faster than either of them expected. It started with Deuce. Hauled into the East Lafayette precinct in the same stained hoodie he'd worn the night they dumped Dr. Zamariah Greaves into the swamp, His swagger dissolved under the weight of real consequence. At first, he laughed it off, slouched in the interrogation chair with a smirk, until the detective slid a photo across the table. It was the Louis Vuitton suitcase, half submerged, bloated, and duct-taped shut, found just hours earlier by a K-9 unit near Bayou St. Clair. The moment he saw it, Deuce blinked. Then he cracked. He talked for 2 hours straight. No lawyer. No hesitation. He told them how Sierra hated her mom's rules. How she felt disrespected, suffocated. How the allowance cut was the final insult. How Sierra said, and he quoted, "She don't get to play God with me and expect me to kiss the ring." He gave them everything. The planning, the knife, the bleach runs, the duct tape, the laughter as the body sank. Then came Sierra. She was silent at first. Just sat there, legs crossed, eyes glazed over with that influencer detachment, like she was on a podcast, not sitting across from 2 homicide detectives. But when they told her Deuce had flipped, she sighed like she'd been inconvenienced. Like it was also beneath her. "You're really gonna let a broke-ass dropout write the narrative?" She scoffed. Well, from there, the confession spilled out, but not with tears or guilt. With mockery. She mimicked her mother's last little gasp, rolling her eyes as she described the way Zamariah had tried to crawl away, bleeding. She called the stabbing messy but necessary. She spoke about the Rolex, the earrings, the bleach, as if recounting a bad date. When asked why, she shrugged. "She treated me like I was regular," Sierra said. "Like some basic bitch who needed curfews and budgets. I'm not that." She forgot who built her Instagram. By the time the formal charges rolled in, the media had caught the scent. Sierra Greaves, once the glowing daughter of East Lafayette's most beloved dentist, now faced first-degree murder, abuse of a corpse, conspiracy to commit murder, and tampering with evidence. Her mugshot, face still beat with untouched lip gloss, spread like wildfire. Deuce Malloy wasn't spared. He was charged with conspiracy, accessory to murder, and destruction of a corpse. The Dream Team had become a cautionary tale. 2 kids too arrogant to see the gravity of blood. 2 children of the algorithm, undone by their thirst for flex, and the cold, sharp edge of entitlement turned fatal. The courthouse overflowed with tension the day Sierra Greaves' trial began. Locals lined the marble steps of the East Lafayette Parish Courthouse, cameras flashing, microphones extended, hungry for a glimpse of the teenage killer in designer heels. Inside, the atmosphere was electric with disbelief. This wasn't just a murder trial. It was the public unmasking of a daughter who'd become a predator, wrapped in silk and selfies. Sierra arrived each day dressed like a runway rebel. One day it was a baby pink blazer with matching heels. Another, a sleek black turtleneck with gold hoop earrings. The smirk never left her face. She twirled her braids between her fingers, scrolled through invisible memories on the table as if waiting for brunch, and giggled during witness testimony, even as grown men and women wept recounting the horror of Zamariah's death. It was Dr. Malika Thorpe who gave the trial its emotional core. She took the stand dressed in all black, a mourning veil of sorts. Her voice trembled as she recounted the night of the wine tasting, the unanswered texts, the ache that settled in her bones before she ever saw the crime scene. She spoke of Zamariah's heart, the scholarship she funded, the girls she mentored, the dreams she built. She raised the child alone, bought her everything, built a kingdom with her own 2 hands. And that girl threw it all away like trash, Malika said, her voice cracking as tears flowed freely. The courtroom fell silent. Even the bailiff lowered his head. Prosecutors painted a chilling timeline. The motive traced back to entitlement, the planning rooted in ego, the execution void of humanity. Surveillance footage. Social media posts. Deuce's full-taped confession. Sierra's own words, arrogant, icy, remorseless, played aloud for the jury. The defense didn't stand a chance. One juror would later describe the experience as watching a demon in lip gloss. Another said she smiled when they showed the photos of her mother's body. Smiled. When the verdict came down, guilty on all counts, Sierra didn't flinch. She leaned back in her chair, crossed her legs, and exhaled slowly, as if bored by the proceedings. But the judge's voice wavered as he delivered the sentence. "In all my years," he said, "I have never seen a colder soul in a younger body. You are a cautionary tale for a generation raised on filters, fame, and the illusion that love has no limits. Life without the possibility of parole." Deuce Malloy was handed 40 years for his role. He cried, loudly, snot and all. The courtroom, still reeling from Sierra's stone-faced silence, barely spared him a glance. Then came the final act, the moment that would be replayed in documentaries, retold in whispers, and embedded in East Lafayette's memory forever. As deputies shackled her wrists and prepared to escort her from the courtroom, Sierra turned toward the media gallery, camera lights blinking like fireflies. With the same poisoned poise that defined her downfall, she smirked and said, "Tell my haters to kiss my ass. I still look better than y'all moms." And with that, she was gone, escorted not to a stage or a salon or a summer abroad, but into the cold corridor of a cell block, where no amount of clout could reach her, where the mirror would become her only audience, where the filtered life she so carefully curated would rot, just like the mother she buried in a swamp. The murder of Dr. Zamariah Greaves did more than leave a bloody stain on the floorboards of her pristine East Lafayette home. It sent shockwaves through the very idea of motherhood, ambition, and the fragile threads that bind family together. A woman who built herself from, he once held against her chest. In court, the mothers wept, not just for Zamariah, but for what it meant. Dr. Malika Thorpe collapsed into tears outside the courthouse, whispering to cameras, she did everything right. Everything. And still, she ended up in a suitcase. Church women who once praised Sierra's poise now lit candles in silence, avoiding her name like a curse. "That wasn't a child," one said. "That was the devil in Dior." At Zamariah's memorial, mothers gripped their daughters tighter. Some took away phones. Some slashed allowances. All were haunted by the same quiet terror. Could that have been my child? Because this was no tale of poverty or parental absence. This wasn't a foster system failure or a case of drugs or gangs. This was the nightmare that wealth couldn't buy a way out of. A legacy shattered not by hardship, but by too much. Too much money. Too much image. Too little soul. Sierra Greaves didn't kill for survival. She killed for a flex. For likes. For a sense of power that sparkled more than any Rolex. And when the blade slipped between muscle and bone, it didn't just end a life, it carved open a wound that made the world ask, was Sierra a product of spoiled parenting, or something darker? Could this have been prevented, or was this tragedy fated from the moment the first diamond bracelet wrapped around a child's wrist? One thing is certain, Dr. Zamariah Greaves died believing in the promise of her daughter. And that belief cost her everything. If this case left shockwaves in you, hit like and subscribe for more twisted tales of betrayal, family horror, and the darkness that sometimes grows behind closed doors. Because sometimes, the scariest monsters aren't strangers, they're the ones we raise.